Good afternoon, and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to be joined by Dion McCormick, no relation, but a great last name, who's our lead solutions engineer, as well as Sarah Mitchell, who is in charge of our documentation department. And so if you've had any questions about control bars or lists, well, today is the day to ask them because Dion has got a presentation which is going to combine both. Sorry to steal your thunder there, Dion. But we're also here, of course, to answer your questions. And you can post those questions right here into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel, but you could also send them by email to guides@alphasoftware.com. So let's get started. Dion, I hear that you're there. Let me go ahead and make you the presenter.
Yes, I am here.
Fantastic. Here, and you have power and running water, I understand, which is all good.
I know.
Big improvement from last week. So I know. Less excitement, but that's the kind of excitement we can do without.
Okay, just adjusting one quick thing.
Sure.
And then I will share. So, and there we go. That's adjusted. How's my audio coming through okay?
Audio is great.
And we have video now. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. A couple quick announcements. Also, we are very excited about having you there. A couple questions that came in this week, and we appreciate those questions, and we will be doing our best, our utmost best to try and answer those. So we'll go over a couple of those today. And then also I have a demonstration on a new feature that's really cool. Actually, it saves a huge amount of work, and I think it's a common use case that I think almost everybody will use or want to use down the road. So, which Dave already stole my thunder. So, but first, I want to say, if you have questions, please go to the Q&A section of the GoToWebinar control panel. Put your questions in there. We have Sarah and Dave online, our esteemed colleague Sarah, who does a fantastic job managing our overall documentation process and also keeping us just organized. And she'll be checking in and helping correct all the errors that I make. So we'll go through that. So a couple quick things first. Again, we will be talking about UI stuff today. It's the list control, but it has to do with how to present data to the user during a presentation. But also, unfortunately, I have some bad news, which I'm sure almost everybody in this crowd has already heard, that our friends Fry's Electronics just finally gave up the ghost, and they're off to the big box store, heaven in the sky. I'm not sure.
They're playing with Circuit City, CompUSA, Computer City. Yeah.
But Fry's was so much better. It was, I mean, I lived there.
Really?
Oh my God, I lived there. It just had such a diverse set of products. I mean, you had
they were only in 9 states in the United States. I did visit one when I was on the West Coast, and they were kind of cool, but
yeah, it was kind of sad. I went there a couple months ago. There's one in Austin, and it was just, half the place was empty. There were like 4 people in the heyday, and they had these frontage, like in the Austin, it's like a piano. Here, this I think was in Cupertino or San Antonio, or I'm sorry, San Jose. God, I've been in Texas too long. But what was amazing is you'd go in and obviously wall to wall people, stuff like that. But the most amazing is they had these 2 long aisles of cash registers with 50 cash registers, and all of them were busy. It was just at their heyday. It was just like a money-making machine, but it's a little sad now. So hope everybody tips went out for our friends at Fry's Electronics. And again, they provided a lot of entertainment. So very good stuff there. So well, it's not good stuff, but good stuff when they were dominant in their situation. So again, today we're going to talk a little bit. I have one other announcement. I'm so sorry. Let's go back here. DevCon 2021 is available for early bird registration, and for the low price of $349, which is just insanely low. And that's till February 24th. So get out there. Let's see, that's today.
That's today.
So get off your tail, get over there.
If you're thinking of going and you're going to sign up today, you'll save some money because it's going up.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's, so it's going to be a 4-day event. We're going to mix it up a little bit. We learned a lot. Dave really and his team did an amazing job of putting together the first one last year. We took all of the learnings and everything else, and we're enhancing it even more, making the presentation smoother and the delivery and everything else to it. And also making sure that that you're going to get high quality recordings of these. So even if you can't make it, I know it's a little harder when you're not on site to be able to watch every I won't call episode, but every presentation. So you will have high quality recordings to the event that you'll be able to access. So you can pick and choose, attend the ones you want live and go from there. So, and the reality is that becomes an asset throughout the rest of the year, not just at this event, because you can always go back and relive and use it as a training device from there. So again, go sign up. We can't wait to see you at the event. It's going to be very, very fun. Do we have kind of a time frame? I don't want to put you on. I am putting you on there. So kind of gut feel when that's target. I don't know if we have the date on here.
Oh,
We're
yeah,
still
we do
finding
have a
that.
date on there, but
Oh, I'm so sorry.
let's find it real quick.
By the way, some really smart people say it's great, which
Just
obviously my name is not on that list.
the smartest people think it's great. We'll give you the
And we'll have
dates
the
in
date.
just a minute when I find them for you.
Okay, yeah, no. So good. Hey, get on there, check that out, go from there. So today I want to cover something actually very interesting. So let me go back here. Excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and walk
All right.
through.
Sorry to interrupt, but since I
No.
have it, I may as well give it to you. It's going to take place October 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. 5th through the 8th, 2021.
Yep. So we can't wait to see you there.
Great. We have better technology to present it with. We have better pacing. We have some new wonderful classes designed. So I think you're going to love it. Anyway. All right. Enough pushing that. Let's dive in. I'm sorry to interrupt you guys.
Well, it gave me a chance to kind of get, behind the curve so we can speed things up. So as you can see, while Dave's been jabbering along, doing whatever he's doing, I built a quick, simple UX. This UX is going to have a list of customers and a control bar. And I'm going to go ahead and set up the list of customers. So we're going to go ahead and this is going to be very simple. We're just going to use SQL. We'll connect to our Northwinds. Going to go in and select our customers because I just want to show a list of customers. I'm going to go into field list and let's just pick a few fields. We don't need everything on there. And no filtering there. So those are our fields. And I'm just going to set them up so it's a simple field layout. And so I've set up a very simple list that's going to show a list of customers from the database. And I'm going to go ahead and fill the container so it looks good. And we'll go in here and we'll go ahead. And we'll go ahead and save this. So always good. And we'll go into working preview. So you're going to see two things when it comes up. First, it's saying the control bar is not defined. We have a control bar component in there, but we haven't defined it. And that's what we're going to do in a little bit. But you'll notice then it's now showing me my list of customers. In this case, it's showing me all customers. And I can click on them, select them, etc., sort them. So it does all the standard aspects there. Now, let's go back and look at the control bar. The control bar is this area either at the top or bottom of the panel card. So my panel card is here and the control bar renders top and bottom. And this is super valuable real estate. I mean, if you use any mobile application, that top part is being used by search, buttons, commands, etc. It's sort of your action area that's associated with it. And then you'll notice there's a bottom area that, so you can pick what you can do is in your panel header and footer, you can put a control bar in there and then add a lot of great content. It really does two things. One, control bars have a whole bunch of really cool built-in features that are very powerful. They also are very compact, meaning if you'll notice, if I go back here real quick to the design environment, I have a single control here, but within that control, it's sort of like its own little designer. I could have a ton of content in there. So before the control bar came along, you would see panel headers, but then you'd see like 60 controls in here, just crazy setup as people tried to do that. And but now it's kind of simplified in there. And again, control bar has a whole bunch of pre-made features and capabilities that make it really powerful to create cool areas on the top and bottom of your panel cards. And we now have a new feature that actually even makes it easier to build something that I think everybody needs within when they're using lists within kind of within their applications. And very important is that it works both in mobile and desktop web. So you can use that control bar as that kind of top menu area on the desktop web, very similar to what you see within a mobile application. So it's applicable in both environments, and you can set rules so that they optimize the layout for those two environments so things look really good. Okay, so as we saw, this control bar is not defined. So let's go ahead and define that control bar. So I've double clicked on it. And so this basically opens up a whole new world, a complete control bar builder, which is fabulous. And you'll see that it has a whole bunch of instructions here, a lot of information. We also have clicks here for control bar user guide and API documentation. There's not only a user guide, which shows a whole bunch of tricks and techniques, but also includes API documentation that allows you to control it. Hold on one second. So you can go through and watch that video or watch that, a lot of great content on there. We also have templates that you can use to start out your control bars with pre-made, kind of ready-made presentations, but also you can save your own control bars. So if you kind of use the same one over and over, you can save it as a template, much like you do with a grid or a UX, to make it faster for those secondary applications to be built. But I'm going to make it very simple. First thing I'm going to do is go to here to items, and I'm going to add an item here, and I'm just going to call it a HTML title, and I'm going to go in there, and I'm just going to put control bar demo. So, and I clicked go, and it just opened up the full editor. I could put in HTML stuff here. So this allows me to basically create items that are going to populate my control bar. So if you'll notice, if I go back here, you'll see that there's like a number of different items. There's this search area. There's these little icons. These are icons. So each of these elements is what's called an item within a control bar. So your first step is to build a control bar, is to build those different items. And then now we can assemble them into a layout. So let me go back into here. So I've got my item. I could add my other items here. I can now go over here to control bar layout, select there, and you'll notice we don't have any layouts. Now what a layout is basically a collection of those items in a certain presentation format. And what's really neat is you can have more than one layout. So you can have a layout for desktop web. You could have one for a mobile device like a tablet, and one for a phone, and each one can be optimized for those environments. You may have different layouts for different users. So you could set up different layouts and show them based on who the user is, conditions within your application. So it's super, super flexible and super, super handy in terms of using it. So I'm going to go ahead and click add layout. It's going to give me a name. It's going to auto assign one, but I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And I've added my first layout, but you'll notice down here, it's giving me an error. It's saying, hey, you have a layout, but there's nothing in this layout. And really what you're doing is layouts are made up of lines. So you'll see over here that I have an area where I can now add a line into it. So I'm going to click add line. And this opens up my line layout editor. So you'll see there's 3 boxes here, before, middle, and after. Now you'll notice it doesn't say left, middle, and right. And the reason why is depending on the orientation of your phone, you could have control bars on the left of the screen, right of the screen, top or bottom. So this kind of metaphor is a little bit more generic as far as the environments you may deploy into. But I'm going to go ahead and click right here. I'm going to say add. This will give me a list of my control bar items that I've created. You'll notice that we have our HTML underscore item. I'm going to go ahead and select that. Click OK. And I'm going to leave the middle and after empty. So now I have a layout. I have an HTML title here in the left, and you can see I can actually see my preview. And remember, my HTML text is just control bar demo. Now you'll notice when I refresh this, it refreshed it, and you can actually look and see what it's going to look like. What's going to look like on an iPhone 4? What's it going to look like on an iPhone 6 Plus? Things like that. So you get a feel for when it's going to run. Is it going to be squinched or stuff? So that's a nice little handy tool before you go and deploy it and test it to be able to actually see it in from right here. And you can adjust and update your own size however you want. So now I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to click Save. I'm going to go into Working Preview. And you'll see now, instead of an error message, we have control bar demo up here in the left-hand side, empty in the middle, and empty in the right here. And then my content is below into the panel card right at this point here. Now, we're finally to the point where what are we here for today, which is to make your life easier. And the way we can do that is with a really cool new feature. A common use case is when you're working with a list, when you've selected a row, you want to give the person an indicator of what has been selected. Now, you'll see that built into the list is an indicator based upon color of the row. And so it's highlighting the row that's been selected. But what if I navigate and I show another part where let's say I'm editing the detail for this. What I want to be able to do is I won't be able to see that. So you're like, well, what record am I on? So a common use case, and I built this myself, is up top, you're going to see here, I want to present some of the information about the row that's currently selected in the list in the control bar. Now, I could always do that. I would create an item, then create a little JavaScript to watch things, and it wasn't too hard, but it took a few steps and you had to kind of manage it. And it was more work than we really thought necessary. So someone in the team went back and said, you know, that's such a common use case. Why don't we make it easy for people to do it? And so there's a new feature in the pre-release. Feel free to download it. Note, I'm using the universal installer, and I'm using, in this case, I launched my developer edition nightly build, but I've got actually the developer edition stable build and the edition. All of these are installed on my device, and it's managing where those locations are. So I'm going to go back in, and what I want to do is put an item on this that will watch this list and take care of it for me. So I'm going to go into design. I'm going to go back to my control bar. Excuse me. I'm going to go back to my items, and I'm going to add something. I'm going to call it HTML selected. Let's call it row, and it's of type HTML. I'm going to click OK. Now I could go right in here and type in some text, or let me open this and type in some text, and it will show hard-coded what that is. But now there's a cool feature. Now I want to do this first. You'll notice here that I see 3 blue underlines. Insert HTML template, which by the way is very handy because we have these really nice pre-built templates you can insert to make your things look really good. You have insert image, and then also another template style you can use to bring in here. But you'll notice there should, in this case, there will be a new 4th area here. So super important. I'm going to go click out of this, and we'll come back in that in a moment. If you're going to use this new feature, you need to go into your list control and make sure that detail view is enabled. This only works if detail view is enabled. You don't actually have to show a detail view. You don't have to manipulate it, but you have to go in here, click on detail view, and select it. Now you'll notice when I selected it, it gave me 2 new, or it gave me a new tab here to go manage the detail view, do a whole bunch of other things. But in this case, I really don't need it. I'm not going to be actually leveraging it. But for this feature to work, when you click this has detail view, turn it on, it turns on a lot of really libraries and other things that this feature relies on. So super important. You may go, hey, well, I can't get this to work. Make sure you've gone in and enabled detail view. And that is, by the way, a lesson from experience that I went through myself. Okay, so I'll click OK. And by the way, it catches that because I enabled the detail view, the return value type must be set to primary key. That's important when you go to edit records and do the syncing and everything else there. Okay, so I've gone ahead and enabled that. Now I'm going to go back into my control bar. So I go back into my control bar. I'm going to go to my HTML selected row, and I'm going to click on here to open it up. Oop, nope, not there. Here, HTML text. And wait, where is it? Wait, I did enable that. Did I not save it properly? Make sure I'm in the right version of alpha. Note to self. I was doing another thing here. Let me go ahead and relaunch. It's in the nightly. Discipline. So notice I'm launching, so I know I'm building the nightly build. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Just to show you how I manage it now is that in my documents, you're going to see I have alpha pre-release and anywhere 12. So I go into pre-release, and there's my control bar project. So I kind of segment where mine are there. Go back into here. Now notice a couple things. You'll notice immediately in the newer releases, they actually show you the build number up here in the header. So you'll notice up here, actually, we have this build number 7500. So I know I'm in there. I can also go to help and about Alpha Anywhere and see that there. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up now. I'm going to go back into my control bar and then go back to my HTML selected and grow and go to HTML text. I'm going to go ahead and open that. And now, because I actually am in the right one, you're going to see over here that I have a new field here called Insert List Field. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. So this is new. When I enabled the detail view, this showed up would have shown up, before. So I go ahead and click here, and you'll notice it's showing me, oh, you have a list customer, and here are the 4 columns that are in that list. Now, those columns don't have to be shown. They could be anywhere in that list. They don't have to be displayed. So I'm going to go ahead and select customer ID. And it puts in this annotation, list customer, customer ID, and click OK. Now, my HTML selected row, I'm going to go over here to control bar layout, because remember, we created the item, but we have to add it to our layout. And you'll notice our current layout only has HTML title. So I'm going to edit this line. I'm going to go here to the middle and select HTML selected row and click OK. So now I'm going to present that in the middle of my item there. So I click OK, I click Save, and let's go into working preview. So you'll notice up top we have a control bar demo, that's our static text, and we have that new HTML text here that's dynamic, but it's not shown. But I'm going to go ahead and click on Annotar and notice what happened. At that moment, it said, oh, this row is selected. It automatically said, oh, I have to update the control bar and show that information. And so any row I go to and select, the current selected row is now presented in the control bar. And if I were to navigate away from this part, let's say when I click on it, I go into a detail view or show something else. Well, this will still say active, so that content that's being shown will be properly quote unquote titled or designated, so you don't lose context within your application. That way, and this especially on a mobile phone, so people are tapping around, they may tap into some stuff. You want to tell them kind of what they're looking at. And this is super flexible. So let's go back in and explore that a little bit more. First, I'm going to go back to my items. I'm going to go here and open that up. First, I can mix and match things. So I can mix and match data elements that are in the control bar. I could say selected record, and notice that's just static text, and then there's there. So I can go here, do a working preview. Select it, and you'll notice it says selected record, and it's showing the data after it. I'm not limited to a single item. So let's go back in here, and I can say dash, and I'm going to insert customer company name. So I want to show both. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to click Save. Let's do a working preview. Now, interesting enough, you're going to see selected record is dash because nothing's been selected at that time. But then when I click here, you'll notice it built this string and built both the ID and the customer name there. And one other last thing you can do, which is kind of cool, is that in here, this is HTML. So I can actually go in here and say, okay, I am going to put in a italics. So I'm just using an HTML, and I'm going to go to the end of this row and put in a /I. So I'm actually mixing HTML or icons or anything you want to put in there. Okay, and you'll notice that it took the template, took the dynamic text, merged it all together for me, and rendered selected record : and then here the record ID and the name of the company in italics here. And it does all that. And you notice there's zero coding. Again, this is really neat because it was such a common use case. And you'd have to go through, create a data element, create a watch statement, do a whole bunch of other things. Now all you have to do is say, oh, enable the detail view. Once the detail view is enabled, go in and edit your control by item and go from there. And what's cool too is that this item is HTML text, but we have other items where like an HTML title and things like that you can add, which will be that use the same technique. So it allows you to kind of really do some cool stuff in terms of dynamically rendering menus and selection items and context status information all within it. You could do a lot of other really cool things within here in terms of inserting images, etc. Super powerful. And then templates, you can insert what are called commands. So you could say, if something is this, then show this. Super flexible, and it's all declarative, meaning basically you just say how you want it to be presented. Alpha does all of the work on how to assemble it and put it and present it to the user. So that's that new feature. Again, it's pre-release, as you saw. I dramatically displayed that issue by having it in the production and then brought it back up in the pre-release. It's there. Feel free to experiment with it, but I gotta tell you, this is one of those nice, like, oh my God, I'm glad that's there now, because I can radically simplify a lot of my current applications, and any new applications. I now have this toolkit that is super fast and easy to implement, but doesn't require me to have to do a whole bunch of coding and JavaScript, and it's just more cleaner. You just go, oh, open it up, insert. You could have more than one list here, put that information in from here, and it's good to go from there. I think this is the start of something really cool. There could be a lot of other cool stuff that comes with it, but check it out. It's really cool. And again, the way you can do that, use the Universe installer, download your nightly edition, launch it. Be a little more careful than I am in terms of launching the right environment when you're doing these presentations. But I think you'll really, really enjoy it. And I find it really fun.
Cool. So just to clarify, this is going to be built in. Right now, it's not in the current release, but it'll be built in and won't require any JavaScript code. Is that pretty much the case to do what you need to do?
I'm sorry, run that back. I mean, I apologize.
Yeah, so someone has said, well, why not just write JavaScript code to do this? But it seems like this is a much easier solution. Not that it was very difficult JavaScript, but to have everything built in all in one place is just a little bit easier.
Exactly. Yeah, and absolutely you could do it. Basically, in here, we have what are called data. You can add data items, and then you can update the value automatically based on a watch event. So you create that data item, watch the list, and then but again, you don't have to do all that stuff along with that, from that standpoint, meaning it takes away all those interim steps to get to what you want, which is, I just want to put a dynamic piece of text on there.
Actually, he was clarifying, you could do JavaScript to hide it if a row is not selected yet.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. You could wrap that, you could add some declarative information into that to do that for sure. Yeah.
That makes sense. Wonderful. So I'm not seeing a lot of questions here today. Got one. Start here. The first question is, while debugging my work, I often find that I bounce in and out of several different functions. Is there a setting when the function contains some form of ESP that gives the name of the current event or function, so you know which one you're in?
Well, when you're in here, not that I know of. I mean, we have indicators here for like the different functions here, which one you're in from there. But as far as a function you've written maybe, or put in JavaScript or created as basic, not really sure on that.
All right then. So I'm looking through, and I think this is the first time we've hit the halfway point, and there's no questions.
Wow. Well,
I know.
I did have one other thing I wanted to cover then, so I'll go ahead and dive into that.
Go ahead and do that, but by all means, go ahead and ask your questions. You don't want us to go home early, do you? Actually, maybe we do want to go home early. I don't know, but Dion, go ahead and please get your questions in so we can take care of them.
Cool. Okay, so I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go into the documentation area. I'm going to go ahead and open this up, which is dynamic connection strings. We got a question this week, and I'll dive into a little bit more if I could spell. I just want to put in the link to this. Where's dynamic connection strings? There we go. So I'm going to link to this so you can go in and see all the details. Now I'm going to use this button to link to it. So I'm going to go ahead and put that into the chat window here. Okay. Oh yeah, Sarah mentioned I noticed Blockbuster also in the heavens. That was also fun, crazy. Remember like haunting the return area, hoping someone would come in and return?
It's not dead. There's one in Portland. Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh, yeah, of course, Portland. Portlandia.
Of course, Portland. Yeah.
Yeah, you would you go in the wall and you'd see all these movies on the wall, and then everyone, the actual DVD or thing behind it was gone. So you're like, ah.
Yeah, I know exactly. I remember
Yeah,
that.
and then you go haunt the return, hoping someone come in and drop it off, and you'd be like stalking the return aisle, thing like that. It's quite pathetic, but
Yeah.
that's the way, in our days, kids. So I
And there's
pasted
too
that.
many things to watch. I know, isn't
Okay.
that crazy? Yeah.
So the question that came in was this, is that we have these things called connection strings, and you define them under the tools alpha DAO connection strings. And this basically points to, it tells the system two things: what kind of database, where it is, or what kind of data source, let me be more clear, how to access it, what the credentials are, et cetera. So it basically wraps that. So when you're actually working with it, you don't have to worry about the details. You could be working with SQL or MySQL or SQL Server, and we kind of have genericized that with that capability. Now, the other powerful thing is when I create a publishing profile, I can say, hey, when I move this code up to XYZ machine, what I want to do is change it so it points to a different database. So when it's working on my local machine, I'm pointed at one location, but when I'm on my development environment, my QA environment, I want to point to another database with some sample data. And then when I finally get it to my production environment, I want it to go to there. So we've always had the ability to, on the fly, when you publish, be able to point that connection string and modify it so when it's running on a different environment. But there was a question, and this is I've used before, is like, well, what if you want to be able to change it on the fly when your application is running it? And a classic case is maybe you have, and we talked about this a while back when we talked about multi-tenant, maybe you have a separate database for each one of your tenants, meaning each person who's like a company, and you don't want to mix and match data within that company. So what you want to do is you want to set up a separate database. And what you want to do, and what's important, is when someone logs in, you want to say, oh, they're with company A, I want them to use database A. Oh, they're with company B, I want them to use company B database. So that is called the dynamic connection string. And so built into the function is the ability, you create a dynamic connection string and you need to call it dynamic connection underscore, and then the name, whatever name you want to put here. It's up to you in terms of what you want to do. Then what you can do is when the application runs, you can basically load a specific session variable called underscore underscore protected underscore underscore the name you used. It has to match this name here. And then from then on, after that session variable has been set, whenever the system goes to connect to the database, it uses that new database connection string. So what you would do is someone would access your application. Maybe you're on a URL. They go to a specific URL and you go, oh, they're on this URL. I'm going to go ahead and set the session of this to the connection string I want, and then off to the races from there. And what it allows you to do then is once that connection string has been modified, then any command after it, you use that dynamic connection string connection, and it will translate it to what you set on the item. So the cool thing about that is then you can go through and develop like regular, meaning you create your dynamic connection string. When you create it, by the way, you will point to a default database where if it doesn't see a session variable, it'll say, oh, you know what, I'm just going to, and usually that's your development database that you're using there. But then when you publish it and you run it live, whenever you load this session variable, then from then on, any command that uses that connection string will use that new one that you created there. Now there is one area that you have to be careful of. I use the command SQL Lookup, and I want to kind of show this real quick. Most of the time everything else just works because it's going to do the translation for you. But there's a command SQL Lookup that I use a lot. Oops, there it is, SQL. Okay, and this is a really nice command. I'll pop down here that basically says, look at a table, get an expression, what is going to come back from filter, and then do the lookup here. And you give it the connection string there. And it just makes it easy to pull data back. If you are using a dynamic connection string, you have to do something a little differently here. So if you have any SQL lookups, just be very careful because you need to make sure, because I ran into that before, you have to do it a little differently. You issue a different way to do that command. You can still use it, but it takes a little extra work that goes into it from that. And that was the only glitch I found in the whole system where I had to kind of take a little bit more time to do that. So let's see, that was the key thing. So number one, go ahead and check out that here. You set it up as normal here, and you use a default database. And then what you can do next is then however you want to do it, either URL, when someone logs in, then you can say, oh, change it from there.
Very cool.
I hope that did.
Excellent. Okay, we have a question that came in which says, when writing an XBasic function that is not being called by an Ajax callback, is there a way to access info from controls on the UX and or run JavaScript? I'm going to say no, because, I mean, the controls won't have anything in them when you first run it. And
yeah, no, I don't think you
can't
can
really
pull that
run
off.
any XBasic without doing basically an Ajax callback. Now, whether or not you use the Ajax callback action JavaScript or you write it yourself, it's still essentially an Ajax callback.
Yeah, because XBasic is on the server. It only runs there. It doesn't run on the client. Only
Right.
JavaScript can. So you'll have to have some kind of callback back to the server. Now, alternatively, you can do things like use arguments and stuff and then have all that data on the client. So then your JavaScript could grab some server-side data, but it will only be valid as of when that UX was rendered, meaning when it was delivered to the client, it's going to include all those extra data elements to be able to do that. But then after that, you have to make a callback to get the data from the server. And actually, very interesting. I wanted to show you that I've been using actually data series a lot more. Remember, in the properties here, we have something, we've talked about it before, data series, and you probably just saw it recently in using it with the JavaScript charting. So I can add data chart or series here, and then I can edit it. And in here, I can call SQL. And basically what this does is the data series calls the SQL database, populates this data, and then has it ready for other controls in there. And one of the most powerful capabilities is that if you say publish data series data to client side, when it sends the UX down to the client, it's going to include that data with it. So for instance, for our JavaScript charting, you could pull data for a chart, and then that data is available offline and can be refreshed from there. And in fact, and so that's kind of cool, because then if the person happens to be offline and that chart wants to display, it's got a local set of data to do that. Now, there is a cool feature in here, and it's in the JavaScript here. And I'm going to go ahead and click here and go insert method. And I'm going to type data series. It's it's called refresh data series. And this is a little command here that you emit. You say dialog object refresh data series, and you give it the name of the data series you created. And you can actually update multiple at the same time. Now, what this does, which is really powerful, is that it basically calls back to the server on your behalf. So you don't have to write an XBasic callback. Basically, you call back to the server. The server then basically reloads that data and sends it down to the client. So now I can then say refresh my chart, and that will have a new set of data there. So it's really kind of cool. It's like almost like a temporary data store that you can go back and forth, and it's all handled. And there's a bunch of other ways you can access the data and use it in your JavaScript. So it's very, very handy from that standpoint. Now, what's very important, and you need to understand from the refresh data series, is this is an asynchronous call. If you were to say refresh data series, and then in the next command in JavaScript say, get the first value of it or do something, you may run into problems, because there's a time lag between when I issue this command, it goes up to the server, collects the data, and brings it down. And it's probably very snappy because it's a small amount of, well, it could be a small amount of data. But the reality is JavaScript will go ahead and run that first command after the first, or second command after the first command has not been completed. And so you're off to the races. And therefore you will lose in that race. Now, what they have talked about is that now more and more there's a new technique in JavaScript, and I know the development team is working on, there's things called promise functions. The idea is when you emit a function, you can put in here like a comma and put the name of another JavaScript function. And JavaScript will go, oh, okay, I'm going to make this call, do this stuff with this command. Then once I am done, I will then go ahead and call this other promise function to then subsequently. And that's really cool because it handles all the asynchronous stuff. Now that's a newer feature of JavaScript. I think it's been around for a while, but it's relatively new. And it hasn't been integrated, but I did talk to the development team and they're definitely look at that because it just makes making your JavaScript much simpler. You don't have to put in waits or timeouts or other things like that.
Oh, that's
It's just
terrific. And then you could chain one thing to the next thing to the next thing.
exactly. Then that command to there, and
Yeah.
therefore you can sleep at night, not worrying about a race command and from things like that. So anyway, long story short, for this is that I'm not sure how you can do that, but you can pull a whole bunch of data down through this data series functionality and be able to refresh it periodically. And then all that data is available for your JavaScript to do anything you want and pass it to other functions, to do updates on the screen, to take action on the screen. It's really wide open from there. And I just want to introduce that as kind of a follow-on discussion with the previous one.
Fantastic. Well, that looks like it for our questions for today.
Yeah,
Dion,
I think
thank you
we'll
very
wrap
much
up
for the
early
presentation.
I think it was just overwhelming.
I know, exactly. We're still taking
So
notes.
again, everybody should go out, pour one out for our friends at Fry's. Gave us a lot of happiness, at least to me.
So what's the appropriate thing to pour out for one at Fry's? Would it be a can of electronic compressed gas duster or something like that?
Exactly. That stuff you use to clean off your motherboard.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
I literally have bought many cans of that when I was building my own PCs, and I'm probably dating myself there, but you'd sit there and you'd sit that thing from there. The other is then Jolt Cola would be the other thing you would possibly do there. Is grab yourself some Jolt.
Real cane sugar and twice the caffeine. That was
exactly. Pour that bad boy out.
Drink, weren't they? Yeah.
I know. Basically, they rebranded it as that 5-hour energy.
5 energy, Monster. Red Bull.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us. I'll turn it over to Dave.
If you do have questions, go ahead and send them to guides, guides at alphasoftware.com. We're happy to answer them. Thanks again, Dion. Thank you again, Sarah, for joining us, and we will see you next week. Actually, we won't see everyone here next week. Dion is away, but don't worry, you will be in capable hands. Sarah Mitchell, head of documentation, will be presenting next week. So hope to see you there. Take care and stay well. Bye-bye.